Okay, welcome to Firefighting Today, the weekly roundtable show where we discuss all things fire service related. Tonight, the panel's going to talk about winter operations. I'm kind of a New England guy and Northeast guy, so we're going to talk a little bit about winter operations and certainly share what we know, what's happening, and helping pass information along if we can. If you are watching us live on YouTube, love to have you leave a YouTube comment. You can interact with the panel. If you happen to be using Twitter tonight, you can use FFT Winter Ops, Firefighting Today Winter Ops, and we would love to have you join in and leave us some comments, and we'll bring your comments right into the panel. So, with that, let's get started. My name is Peter Lamb. I'm the host of the panel tonight. I am the author of PeteLamb.com, and I'm also the host of the Firefighter Training Podcast. Rob Fling, say hello.
Good evening, everybody. Rob Fling, Chief, Dix Hills Fire Department, Long Island, and also the founder and president of Face Peace On.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Joe Steins, say hello. Joe, are you with us?
Sorry, Chief. This is Joe Starnes, Oak Grove Volunteer Fire Department Program Manager for Project Kill the Flashover. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Charlie, say hello.
Good evening, everyone. Charlie Hall, Deputy Fire Chief, TF3 Airport here in Providence, Rhode Island.
Thanks for being here, Charlie. And Adam, say hello.
Good evening, everyone. Adam Ganley coming from Kellogg, Iowa, on the Kellogg Fire Department, and I am a captain.
Thanks, Adam. Shane, say hello.
There we go. Hey, everybody. Shane White, Paris Island Fire Rescue in South Carolina, and I'm a captain.
All right. Thanks for being here. So the deal is tonight we're talking a little bit about winter ops, and I know that may not apply to everybody, but certainly we want you to be aware that we're interested in it, and it is a piece of the fire service which just makes life a whole lot more difficult. The genesis of this is that here in New England, I'm coming to you from Rhode Island. Charlie's in Rhode Island as well. I did an awful lot of work in Massachusetts in my career. So the point is, up here in the Northeast, we have had 5 consecutive weeks of snow. Rob's on Long Island. He had a similar taste of what's going on. Somewhere in Rhode Island, we have somewhere around 30 inches of snow on the ground for a snowpack. Just north of me in Boston, they have upwards of 90 inches of snow on the ground. So a couple of things about winter operations. Anybody got any comments, just some things that we can talk about in dealing with winter operations? Any just for instances, things. Let's start with Adam. Adam, you certainly got your share of winter. What do you start doing differently when the winter months come in? What do you do differently in your department?
On a few of our trucks that we do take out in the winter ops have small motors on them, so we start the small motors and open the recirculate valves on our little quick attack. It's also our brush truck. We take the nozzle off the end of the booster reel and stick it inside the tank, and before we go out the door, we make sure the small motors are running to keep that water circulating in it so it doesn't freeze up.
Yeah, certainly a great one, right? If you're using those small motors, small trucks, you certainly want to recirculate. And even if you're a pump operator, you certainly want to be recirculating water if you're running the pump. So rule number 1 is make sure you're circulating water at all points during a winter operation. Charlie, you've been around for 1 or 2 winters. What can you talk about, or what experiences have you had this winter that might be different?
Well, a couple of the things that we do at the airport, every time we roll out with the trucks, there's a device in our crash rigs called a piping heater, and it's actually activated from the cabin. It's a small separate heating system that circulates antifreeze from the truck radiator through the pipes around the pump, not through the pump itself, but around the pump to keep the pump warm, and also around the tank to keep the tank water from freezing. One thing that we've noticed this winter that we're having difficulty with at the airport is is what we call a line of sight issue. And it's important for us to be able to gauge the direction of travel of an aircraft when it's coming in. We usually have that information at hand. But one of the problems we're running into this year when we pull out of the station, we have a large ramp in front of the station. I know you've seen it, Pete, and Kevin Burns has seen it, so they can picture it better than the rest of you guys. But we have a line of sight that when we pull out of the station, we can look left and right and see both ends of, actually all four ends of our active runways. We have a pile of snow now on the south side of the station that's upwards of 30 feet tall, which just completely destroys our line of sight. So we have to pull forward probably further than we would like, depending upon the situation and what runway we're going to take for the emergency aircraft. So that has presented us with some difficulties. There is no place to put the snow. We're just running out of places to put it. And then, other than that, the same problems that the city departments run into. We've got to go out and clear hydrants. We've got to, make sure our hydrants are operational. If we do need a hydrant, we may find it frozen just the same as the city department does. So the regular diligence takes effect.
Yeah, that's certainly a problem with apparatus in the street. Some of the city departments are having trouble at corners. They can't do that. I'm going to try to find a picture that was just circulated tonight on the internet from the city of Chelsea, Massachusetts. As you know, Chelsea is just north of Boston, and the streets are so narrow because we couldn't clear the snow back. They couldn't put their H outriggers down on their ladder truck. They cannot get full extension on putting the ladder truck outriggers down just because of the snow. And as Charlie said, the visibility issue is also pretty good. Christine, what's happening in your neck of the woods in New Jersey with winter operations?
Basically, what we've been encountering is snow piled on either sides of the streets. A lot of people parking their cars on either side, both sides actually. So it makes it tough for larger apparatus to get through, especially if someone has either a big aerial truck or a TDA. That's real tough for them to get through. But even on the narrower streets, something like a pumper has difficulty turning corners and getting through. If there's another car coming in the opposite direction, it's tough for them. We've also had a couple fires recently, one in my area actually, in Lodi, where a house burned to the ground and they had difficulty establishing a water supply due to frozen hydrants. So that's been a big issue, especially with the cold weather. A lot of hydrants are freezing up. Main thing is finding a hydrant that's not frozen, getting the water circulating through it, through the first due pumper or whichever engine lays in, and, feeding the other apparatus.
Right, absolutely. Good stuff. Let's hear from Warren, who is usually on the panel and for some reason couldn't get in with us tonight. And then I'll head over to Joe Steins. Joe, we'll talk about the fact that you may not get this weather all the time, but you actually had a bout of it. But Warren's got a couple of things. Just operating on the Fireground becomes that much more difficult due to firefighting water becoming ice. Hypothermia for victims and firefighters during longer ops, and dehydration is a big deal. Folks don't realize the danger, and they're not inclined to drink water and drink Gatorade during winter operations. So yeah, all great stuff, Warren. Absolutely. It's amazing that you can actually get dehydrated in winter operations for a lot of reasons. That's an excellent one to bring up. Joe, you don't normally deal with winter operations, but you just had a little bout of ice and cold. How does that affect your departments, and do you do anything different?
They, some of the things they do are very common to what you guys were mentioned. A lot of things that are different for us. Simply, you've got mostly icy roads and drivings and retarders and talking about what Adam was talking about, the pumps go in gear once they stop now, and A lot of staffing at the station. We have a response from home fire department, and during these kind of icy days, they're staffed at the station. And, matter of fact, one of the best cooks in the South is the fire chief's wife, and she fixes food for them all week long this last week. So it's a great place to stay. And so there's all kind of different pieces and parts of it. Rehab's like you said, it's a big piece of it for us. Coordination with other departments, restricted response in some cases, is it now a tighter response run model just to keep large apparatus out of the ice, slower response times. So it's quite a number of games.
Right, right. Absolutely. Rob, what are you doing? Anything different? Do you have to staff up? And what was the effect? We were talking offline just before we started. You might want to bring in some of that conversation. You've been affected by this 4 or 5 week stunt here. What's happened in your department? Nope, you're muted. You're muted, Rob.
Like Christine was saying, our streets have become really narrow. We're having a little problem getting down multiple pieces of apparatus down the street. We had a fire yesterday afternoon. First hydrant was covered up completely. Actually, I had no idea where it was. Engine ended up having to lay 700 feet of 5-inch into the building. Frozen hydrants we really haven't had a problem with. Yesterday we had a problem once we were done. We couldn't shut the hydrant down. Other than that, it's for us. It's slow down. You know, it doesn't pay to get yourself hurt before you even get in to get the fire put out.
Right, right, absolutely. Shane, you don't deal with it a lot. What any cold weather suggestions? I know you were on a department previous, a little further north, I think. What are you doing about cold weather? Anything you do differently? You're muted, Shane.
Yeah, it just gave me the unmute now thing as I was starting to talk. Thanks. Being in South Carolina, we don't deal with the cold, obviously. I think we got to 26 the other day, and everybody started shutting down schools, and I just had to laugh. But where I'm from originally in Colorado, we get over 200 inches a year, so it's just to be expected. And so when the winters would come, we'd get out every year, we'd put up the flags so we knew where the hydrants were. One of our biggest issues was the hydrants, especially on some of the backcountry roads. When they would plow the berms up by the middle of winter, we'd have 10-foot berms on the side of the road. So even with our flags, we had no idea where the hydrants were. We spent a lot of time digging out hydrants during the winter. Talked about the pumps freezing up. I'm glad that got brought up. I had the question. I still do reserve duty time in the Air Force in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which gets plenty of cold. And I was always instructed in cold weather, leave the pump wet, circulate it, like everybody's been talking about. The Air Force Base, they drain the pump. As soon as it gets to close to 32, they drain every pump, and they leave them completely drained until they absolutely necessary. So I was kind of interested to see what everybody's opinion was on that. For me, I kept pump wet, kept my recirc valve and my tank fill valve cracked, so even when I pulled up on scene, all I had to do was put the truck in pump, and I didn't have to get out of the truck. Just left it prepared to circulate at all times. Driving slower is a big thing. Really big thing. There's a lot of departments that got on the on-spot situation there for a while. We had them in the Air Force for a while, but we kind of steered away from them. In my hometown, we didn't have them at all. The snow was just too deep. They actually were completely worthless. The snow it just ended up getting stuck. The chains wouldn't turn anymore, so we just didn't even bother putting them on the trucks all that often. But pretty much everything that everybody else has talked about already, we dealt with in an effort to deal with the long, cold winters that I expected, grew up with at 8,000 feet in the Colorado backcountry.
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to talk about tire chains. I'm a fan of Insta chains. Certainly in my earlier day, we had to chain up the outside duals. You would block the inside duals, put the truck up in the air, and actually put tire chains on. That was a big deal, but certainly the chains are there. You know, simple things like your pressurized water extinguishers, taking them inside the cabs. The other one that's an interesting one is the departments that have quints. You know, they pull up with the aerial and they forget about the fact they have a pump and a tank sitting there. So that's actually a big deal to recirculate water. You know, you don't think about it on an aerial, certainly, but that's something that's important. A couple of things. Has anybody got anybody on the panel? Do you have your hydrants mapped? Has anybody got hydrants mapped, and how do you do that? Rob, I see you nodding.
Yeah. In our dispatch software, the dispatcher, when the first engine goes on the road, actually gives the primary and secondary hydrant locations. And in all our engines, we have iPads as an MDT, and the officer of the rig can see the hydrant locations right up on the screen.
Excellent, excellent. And when you say hydrant location, is it the sort of thing that says in front of or across from
No,
number
it's
such
actually
and such?
a map, and you actually see the hydrant right on it.
Yeah.
And the little houses are numbered.
Oh, all right. So you got some reference for where it is, right?
Yeah, you know exactly where to start looking.
All right. And Christine, I think you said you've got some sort of mapping as well.
Yep. We have GPS units in all our apparatus, and a firefighter previously on the department had taken the time to put hydrant locations in every GPS unit. So whenever they go out on a call, they always have little icons that pop up on the screen for each block where the hydrants are located. So that way, even if they're buried, they are more likely to find it, but then there's the difficulty of digging it out.
Yeah, it certainly is a manpower intensive situation. There's no question. It slows the situation down. Does anybody on the panel open hydrants first before you make the line connection? For example, do you test your hydrant before you lay the supply line, or do you just make the hydrant up? I know one of the major cities, I don't know what you did, Charlie, when you were in Cranston. Do you want to, in Cranston, did you open the hydrant before you made the hydrant up?
Are more likely to find it, but then you'll figure it out.
Yeah, manpower in question.
Kevin, you're going to have to mute yourself, please.
Does anybody on the panel
hang on 1 minute.
hydrants first before you make the line connection? For example, do you test your hydrant before you lay the supply line, or do you just make the hydrant up? You know, one of the major cities, Cranston,
All right, I think Kevin, I've muted you because you're watching on YouTube and there's a little bit of a delay beyond us here. You were throwing that delay back at us for a minute, so let's see if we can get you squared away on that. Charlie, did you open hydrants prior to dressing them or not?
I have to tell you, Pete, quite frankly, that was determined by district. When I worked in North Edgewood, it was a pretty shady area, and the hydrants had a tendency to be vandalized. So we always flowed first before we connected up, in case kids had a habit of sticking either rocks, cans, softballs, bottles into the hydrant. So we always made sure we flowed them. But if you get up the west end and Dean Estates, we never found them a necessity to be that strong. So I'd have to say kind of that was a year-round thing by district. Not so much the test to make sure that the hydrant worked, but the test to make sure that there wasn't any debris in it. It was a problem with vandalism.
Yeah, exactly. What are you carrying to deal with your firefighting water that's coming out the front door? I mean, many of us, I know a number of people that have had taken a dive coming out the front door because all the water and stuff has frozen up. What is it you typically carry to secure yourself for folks falling on the frozen firefighting water that Warren brought up?
Chief, we put some actual ice melt on our trucks now. We had that incident over by the pumper going down the driveway. We had a big sheet of ice last winter. We totally changed our look on that and started putting ice melt on our trucks.
So what are you doing, like a bag or a 5-gallon bucket or something? How are you carrying that?
We got it in a container.
Okay.
We put it in a container. We don't have a whole lot because we don't hardly have any whole lot of structure fires here. We got enough to actually just clear the area if we need it.
Right, right. And Rob, you said you had a different idea. What are you doing?
Yeah, we use Speedy Dry.
Right, right. Yeah, if Speedy Dry you're carrying anyway, probably to do fluid spills from auto accidents or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
It really works well on the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's good stuff. A couple of comments from the audience. Let's get to those. Jimmy, thank you for being here, Jim. You had training on this very winter operations. That was kind of another topic. Do you do a winter ops training each year, and when do you do it? So thank you for that, Jimmy. That's a good segue. And Warren certainly is, as Christine said, and somebody said, GPSing the hydrants is clearly a big deal. If it is 2015, we should know how to do that, and it should be a way to do it. Problem is, in real life, once you GPS it, literally figuring out where it is precisely when it's this kind of snowfall is crazy. Hydrants are on the curb, and when the snowplow comes by, they just go crazy. They just go crazy. Talking about footing, Shane, what do you got? You got something you want to talk about for keeping your footing on the Fireground?
When I was working in Maine for the Navy, we had we actually got, just for safety issue, we were each issued a set of rubber booty slipovers, essentially is what they were, and they had some chain, kind of a metal coil that was wrapped around the sole of these rubber booties that stretched over your firefighting boots, so that we could carry them in our pockets and then slip them over our boots when we were out on the ice. But we also carried the Speedy Dry and stuff in our trucks that we would use for the people who had to deal with it after we left. But for us ourselves, we just carried these little. They were cheap in construction, but I'm sure they weren't cheap because they were a fire department related item. But we just stretched them over our boots, and we improved our traction that way.
It must have been a big hit in living rooms, huh? just a little bit of my sick humor there, but yeah. I can see you going through the hallway on the hardwood floor.
They basically they look like a little sock, a mesh sock is probably the best way I can describe it. And so they slipped on and off really easy, but they were great for working around the truck.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's important. The other thing I noticed, I don't know, for the companies that do EMS, I know running EMS in the winter is it's a horror show. It's you're pulling up to people's houses not shoveled. You're trying to manage a stretcher. You're trying to carry mom and dad out and grandpa out, and it just complicates things so much more than what normally happens in EMS. What do you do differently? We always thought to add manpower, send another company or something like that. What do you do differently, Rob?
We actually, during a snowstorm or immediately following a snowstorm, we'll actually send one of the district snowplows out with the ambulance. And if we have to, we'll plow the driveway.
Right, right. And we would do something similar. Our public works department in any department I worked in always was very good to us in terms of they would send right out, but we would send a fire department pickup or the police department pickup with a plow to try to assist. How many people staff up? We got a couple of volunteer departments. Do you, Adam, would you ever have people stay at the station because weather would prevent personal vehicle responses?
No, we never have had to do that.
Okay. Joe alluded to the fact that he had done that. Rob, do you ever actually staff stations when it's, blizzard conditions or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. Each one of our stations will have one engine crew, one ambulance crew, preferably an ALS ambulance crew. In ready to go.
And you keep them right in house, absolutely.
Yep. And we'll rotate crews because sometimes we'll have to do 24, 36 hours of standby.
Right, right, absolutely. So what else? Now, what we haven't talked about, all we said was about slipping and falling on the fire ground. What about what about pulling a Mattadale when there's 24 inches of snow on the ground? How does that affect you? What can you do different? Anybody want to talk about that? I mean, I would hope that we're all shouldering our loads now and carrying that as far as we can. But once that line lays down into that 20, 30 inches of snow and gets charged, it certainly is a bear to move. Anybody want to talk about how we do that or how we do things differently?
I haven't had much of a problem with that, to be honest with you. You know, if you lay the first 50 feet out at the front door, you lay it out. You lay it out properly. It flows right into the house. Is what we found.
Yeah.
We try to have our nozzle backup door and control. So we have guys spread out on the line to help lessen the load.
Right, right. But you know what I'm saying? It can actually burrow into the,
Oh, yeah,
into the depth of the snow.
But the first 12 inches of snow we have here right now is solid ice.
Right.
So it's real easy right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is easy to move a line. Yeah, yeah. What about laddering? Do we do anything different with ladders? What do you do about throwing ladders, carrying ladders? How does that complicate the fire ground with 12, 20 inches of snow on the ground? Anybody got some? Charlie, what are your thoughts about ground ladders?
I think you're gonna find the use of an aerial ladder. Say you had a one-story ranch, because you don't have accessibility for ground ladders. And I'm one of those guys that if I see an aerial up to the roof of just a regular shotgun ranch, I kind of say, why the heck aren't they throwing ground ladders? But what we're dealing with here, I know exactly why we can't throw ground ladders. And then we get into short jacking the aerials and everything else because of the snow piles. I believe that was mentioned about the Chelsea guys. Staffing becomes an issue when you have weather extremes. I know some departments put on during the two blizzards that we had. I know my local department here in town, they put extra guys on each truck. I mean, I should say additional. I hesitate to ever use the word extra because nobody has extra. They put additional personnel on each piece just because of that. So ground ladders become a problem, and you see a lot more of the use of the aerial devices.
All right, and that's a good point, Charlie. And I bring that up for this reason. So we've all got rapid intervention policies, and we've all got these wonderful SOPs that we do, and we're going to ladder 3 sides, and we're going to do this, and we're going to put ladders to every window or what have you. Do we operate differently? Do we make tactical decisions differently when we've got these kinds of conditions? Do we pull up and run a house fire the same as we do when it's 60 degrees and the sun's out? Do we have a winter operation? Do we have something that's significant? How does the incident commander handle this variance? I believe I know a guy that uses the word variance a lot, and how do we handle that when we do that? What do we do different? Rob, do you behave differently as the IC?
We've had 4 fires since the beginning of the year. I really haven't had to change things that much.
Okay. Okay, and that's fine. And I'm not suggesting you do, but when you can't do those RID operations, or when you can't get those ground ladders in, or things that you think normally would happen, it does become an issue. Now, Rob, you had a couple of, you want to talk about a fire that you had? You want to toss that out now?
Share those. It's actually a good segue into those pictures because, let's see if, can you see them?
I've got you presenting to everybody. I'm looking at something that apparently all of the lights are on in the house here. That's my official size up.
That's Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve fire. Okay.
No, that was actually a couple of weeks ago. That's what we had on arrival. It was a small 2-story sort of cape type of house. It was one of the old farmhouses in the area. The homeowner got home, went to watch TV, said he smelled smoke, and the next thing you know, he barely made it out of the house. That's how quick the fire advanced. But you could see how much snow was on the ground. So what we originally did was, we'll try to work smarter, not harder. 2.5 right in, and it, believe it or not, knocked it right down on both floors. The volume of fire that we had there actually took out the interior stairs, so we had to make access. I don't know if I have a picture of it. I don't. We actually had to make a second floor access via ground ladder, and the ground ladder ended up icing up like crazy. So it was real dangerous. We ended up putting a roof ladder on the interior of the house to replace the stairs once we had a good handle on this thing. But you can see 2.5, and then 1.75 inches into the front door, we actually saved the entire left side of the house.
Yeah.
So even though it was probably 10 degrees this night, without the wind chill, it was blowing pretty good.
Yeah.
But the boys did a good job. We had a little water problem. The house was about 100 feet off the street. Buried hydrant, from what I understand. But we made the initial hit with tank water just to try to slow things down a little bit, which worked perfectly. 750 gallons goes a long way. And by the time we got that taken care of, we had back on hydrant water.
Nice, nice. In that fire, you're able to handle that, Dix Hills, or did you need mutual aid for that, Rob?
We'll mutual aid a fast truck.
Okay.
I actually instituted an automatic mutual aid policy.
Yeah.
That's geography based, depending on where the incident location is. My closest department gets activated as a rapid intervention team, and then I also have a second department and as well as a third department that come into my headquarters, one engine and one ambulance as a standby, because we frequently work multiple alarms.
Right, right. No, that's good stuff. It looks like you got the picture previous, I think, or
This one?
no, go up to this. Yeah, go up to that one. It looks like you got a good crew. What kind of response will you get for this operation, Rob? What did you have?
Out of both houses, out of all 3 houses, I think I probably rolled 6 pieces of apparatus outside of our rehab and our ambulances. So I probably had 6 engines plus another additional engine as rapid intervention. So I had plenty of people.
Nice, nice. Looks like a good operation. You mentioned rehab. Does anybody have any specialized rehab vehicles, such as? And you can stop sharing, Rob. Thanks. Does anybody have any specialized rehab vehicles that might be heated as well as cooling? I'm talking about something in addition to the canteen units that usually show up. Are there any specialized rehab vehicles? Shane, do you have anything to do that? Maybe for heat as well as cold, but any specialized rehab stuff?
In my current department, we have the ability to set up a tent with some heaters. It's more for a hazmat setup.
Yep.
But we can pull it out at any time and use it. In my previous departments, my very first department was a suburb of Denver, and we used to, the first truck we got with an enclosed cab just had a large bench seat across the back, could seat 4, and we left it completely empty on the inside, and that's what we would use for rehab. We'd pull people off the scene, put them in there, keep the truck running with the heat cranked up inside of it, and get everybody 15 minutes inside there to warm up between bottles, and then send them back out into the snow.
Right, right. In Massachusetts, they got a couple of specialized vehicles. In the summer, they have the cooling chairs and the whole thing, and get your wrists and arms cooled and cool your core temperature. And they also have heating units as well. For folks listening that may not have those resources, make an arrangement with your local bus company. If you have to bring a school bus in or a transportation bus in, with heaters. You can just store firefighters in there till they thaw out. And then, as Rob said, the bad news is then we send them back out in the cold. Those things, if you do not have those resources. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, which was unique for me this year, was, and Charlie, I think you can speak to this as well. The other day, today being Sunday the 22nd, probably on Thursday or Friday, they released a statement that we had 80 building collapses. Partial roofs, wall collapses, any of those things. And that really was that's a huge number. I don't think I've been through a series of incidents where we've had that many collapses. The most recent set of events is interesting, is these large large icicles, large ice dams are breaking away, falling down the side of the building, striking and severing the gas meter, and in some cases causing ignition. And I got to tell you, Charlie, have you ever heard as many as we've heard this year?
We actually just had one in Warwick last night, Pete, at the one of the markets on West Shore Road. Ice dam and roof snow from the building exposure on called the exposure building side 4. Came down and actually snapped the gas main, snapped the meter off, and it was free flowing gas into a supermarket. I don't know if you heard about that in Warwick.
Yeah.
And they had their hands full for a while. At the same time, they had a fire going on at the Gold's Gym, not too far from where I live, and to make it a hat trick, they had the roof collapse at Lowe's at Quaker Lane. They had all three of those things within 6 hours of one another.
Right, and this, I was hoping Johnny was going to be here. Johnny David, I think, was involved in an incident in Massachusetts. I think he had one where the actual gas did ignite, and it went to second and third alarm. So let me ask you this question. How many of us would think, as a normal course of business, that we're all thinking structural collapse at a working fire? How many of us would think about the snow load that was already there as part of our... I'm not sure it would register to me. I got to be honest with you. I am not sure that would be my first thought. I'm thinking structural collapse because of the fire, but I'm not sure that I would anticipate the amount of roof load that we had there. Shane, would that be your first thought? I mean, it's not your problem in South Carolina, but I'm not sure I would take that environmental factor right into my head about the collapse potential right away.
Back when I was in the mountains when we had the snow, we used to give a lot of thought to that. It was actually part of the size up, was checking. We had 2/3 of our district was second homes. So a lot of those second homes went without regular maintenance, and 200 inches of snow a year. There were a lot of houses that they had people come plow the driveways, but the roofs weren't always getting shoveled. So even though most of the houses were built with metal roofs, you still had a tendency to build up. As a kid, I remember shoveling snow as deep as 36, 48 inches off a roof of a house. Of course, because of how much the snow load was, the houses were all built with the roofs on 16-inch centers, whereas down where I am now, it's 24 or 28-inch centers because they don't have the snow load. But we always kept in the back of our head that any of these roofs, there's the potential for collapse because of all that extra weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, you also said you were chasing sprinkler pipes. Some of the cases where we had these collapsed roofs, they were getting the box alarm because the roof took in the sprinkler piping. What were your instances with frozen pipes and stuff?
We've had a lot of them. We have a senior living condominium complex here that was not built properly. Every cold snap we get in the garage area, one of the sprinkler lines will pop in somebody's garage. This past week, the kids were off on winter break. I ran one, I think it was Wednesday night, was an automatic fire alarm, and nobody home. you wouldn't have really thought anything of it, but all the windows were fogged over in the house. On closer examination, when they made the back of the house, the OV said, "Chief, I think I see water." So we made the decision to pop the side door, and they were away on vacation. They were actually in Texas, and one of the pipes for the heat, in the floor heat, the radiant heat, probably let go. I don't know how many days ago, but they probably had 6 or 8 inches of water in the basement, and because it was just pumping hot water, sorry, it condensed in the house, everything covered in dew.
Yeah,
it was disgusting.
Right.
And, unfortunately, the house is not livable now. So these guys, this family's coming back from vacation, and basically they have one room in the house that wasn't affected.
Right. Right, absolutely. Joe, you've been quiet. Any thoughts about what we're talking about? Any thoughts where we could make it better or consider some of these things? Any thoughts from you, Joe?
You guys are the experts at this. I feel like that I'm talking to Noah in the rainstorm. You're quite the experts. I will say your question on loading, we did consider that, especially anything with a flat roof. It was an extra risk component of the fight, and it was also a big risk component as it related to interior operations. So, those were all pieces of the kind of discussion. One of the aspects of taking care of the troops is frostbite inspection. Rehab needs to have a piece of check and balances in it that we don't normally have. People who don't come out dressed quite appropriately, that becomes a more critical issue. Injuries are more prone to be a little faster. Minor injuries will go up. So you guys know this way better than me, and that's the reason I'm listening and learning tonight.
All right, good enough. Christine, anything from the EMS side you want to add? You're sort of an EMS person. Any EMS thoughts?
Really haven't had any issues. I know there was one Sunday where we had very, very icy weather, and there were quite a few calls for people who slipped on the ice. They got outside for whatever reason, either just outside their houses, on the sidewalk, in the driveway, anything like that. Any different measures as far as response? But that's an issue that we had to deal with recently. As far as responses in the snow, it's pretty much just drop the snow chains and drive slowly and carefully, and just get there in one piece.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that we didn't talk about is the extreme cold. Rob has suffered this. Shane, you said you got down to what, 20s the other day. We're about to. I think Rob and I have the same weather, and certainly Charlie does. They believe Tuesday morning here we'll be down in the negative numbers, negative single-digit numbers. What about the elderly and folks like that? Do your departments do anything like heating centers or doing anything for checking on the elderly in these real extreme cold temperatures? Does anything happen outside the realm of your responses? Do you do anything for the citizenry, particularly the elderly, in these single-digit wind chill things that we have? Anybody?
Not really.
No, it hasn't been considered.
Beginning of the week ought to be real interesting, because I don't know what the temperature got up to there today, but we were in the 40s today. So it ought to be a nice skating rink come the beginning of the week.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. What's happened here, our weather situation was snow last night, rain all night, snow this morning, 40s this afternoon, and sub-zero after midnight tonight. So all that slush and garbage that melted certainly is going to flash freeze tonight to be a problem. The other thing that we talk about is utilities at these fires. A couple of fires that they had in the city of Boston and around the city of Boston is the gas company could not find the curb box. Right, so you're trying to do things from the meter, you're trying to get gas utilities shut off in the street or water utilities from broken pipes, and 24, 30, and like I said, in Boston it is 50, 60, 80 inches of snow on top, and unfortunately these roads haven't been cleared to the curbs. So again, you may have delays in your utilities unlike what you would normally see. The response is probably great on normal days, but certainly may have some challenges there. Anything else? Anything else? What was the lowest you got, Adam, out in Iowa, or what's been your low this year?
Tonight they're talking -5. That's up without the windshield. They're talking with the windshield to be between -15 and 25.
Well, there's a reason I'm glad I'm not there. I hope you don't go out tonight. I hope that pager doesn't go off tonight, Adam. That's not going to be pretty.
Get the guest bedroom going there, Shane. We're all coming down.
Yeah,
No problem.
yeah, absolutely. So as we begin to wind down, any thoughts, comments? We've talked about. Let me just kind of recap, and we'll summarize as we go. Right. So we've talked about ourselves slipping and falling, footing on the ice. We've talking about rehabbing ourselves, control utilities, spotting hydrants, delay and digging out hydrants, handling lines, ladders, those kinds of things. What do we need to do to summarize this as we begin to wrap up? Anybody just kind of roundtable it?
Well, I made a quick little note. My first fire department, it was essentially a second alarm for if any kind of event we knew was going to take some time. The Salvation Army was essentially a second alarm, and it was just right in the SOPs. It was like, hey, we're going to be here for more than an hour or so. Give them a call, and they'd show up with their food truck, and they'd have hot drinks and hot food, and they'd stay out there with us as long as we were. And they loved any opportunity to provide that assistance to us. My last Colorado department before I went to the Fed side, we started using the Red Cross a lot for the very same kinds of things. When we knew we were going to be out for a while, and especially during the winter, we'd grab them at every opportunity because they were looking for that reason to be out. It's kind of like a lot of departments these days are finding out you need to be out there for them to see that you provide the service. And then on the EMS side, we pretty much always provided a service as a fire department. Even though we didn't run EMS, we provided additional hands. But during the winter, we provide extra hands on pretty much every call because we knew that getting the cot to the ambulance wasn't going to work very well. You were going to have the issue of the cot not being able to roll across the accumulated snow. So we'd bring extra bodies so we could carry the cot essentially to the ambulance and take the load off of the EMS workers.
Yeah, great stuff. All great stuff. I didn't mention the Salvation Army. Charlie and I happen to be spoiled, actually, quite frankly. I would tell you I've been chief of 3 suburban departments, and we are supported out of the city of Providence by a canteen group. It is the Sparks, the Buffs. They run the canteen truck on a sponsorship of the Salvation Army. And we, in some cases, Shane, don't even have to call. They will come on anything from a working fire on up. And they can provide hot meals, cold drinks, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, we've been blessed to have that resource. I did put them as a special call on all working fires, but it was a good thing. So, Rob, anything you want to summarize? That was a good summary, Shane. Thank you for that. Rob, anything from you?
It's basically use your head and be safe.
Yeah.
You don't do anyone good if you get yourself jammed up.
Right. And as we talked about the slip and fall, I mean, you fall down and break your arm, you're out of service. I mean, it just it doesn't have to be a catastrophic fire deal. You can just fall down and break something. Joe Starnes, anything you want to summarize just as we wrap up?
No, I'm a student of the trade tonight, and I really appreciate the opportunity to hear. I think one of the things that you guys have taught a lot of us that it's not accidental that you respond in a different environment. You got to plan it. You need to make a plan, write it down, then you need to practice it, and then need to come back and say, did it work? And are we better for it? I think a lot of things that said tonight, you could quickly make quick notes, look at your own program, look at your own processes, and then write your own severe weather response. I think it's a really, really good audit of what we need to be doing.
Right, right. Collectively, we hit a lot of points. Ethan, you missed a bunch of the discussion. Anything you want to add on cold weather ops? We've been, pump operations. We've been far and wide. Anything you want to chime in with?
No, I apologize for being out. Just layer up and be safe out there.
Yeah, that's a good one. Dress in layers. That's a good one. We didn't actually hit on that, but yeah, absolutely layer up so you can get rid of some of that sweat and perspiration or whatever, and get yourself adjusted. Certainly. Christine, anything as we wrap up?
No, it's just a matter of, as Ethan said, wearing layers, being careful out there, and of course, taking the experience of past fires and weather like this, and hopefully implementing training, SOPs, SOGs, something like that, so you're better prepared in the future.
Okay, good stuff. Charlie, what are you thinking?
We the beginning of each duty day, our shifts run from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. 24 hours. At the beginning of each duty day, we have a fax command. It's called a field condition report. And what we do is we'll review it quickly in the beginning to see if anything is amiss as far as the routes that we're going to take on the airfield. And this type of weather, we take that time to acknowledge, not just with one another, but with the operations division, the police and stuff, that there may be the possibility of a delayed response. There may be the possibility of having to take a different route than we're accustomed to. And what I like to emphasize is the time to do that is when we're in the station, not when we get behind the wheel of the rig and realize that, yeah, our response is going to be delayed, or yeah, we can't go this way. We have to kind of plan for that ahead of time and adjust ourselves accordingly. So we try to emphasize that every day.
Yeah, you know what? Cold weather briefing is not a bad thing, even if you're in a city department or whatever, or just plant that seed that people have to behave differently today. I think that's an important thing based on the weather. Adam, what do you got as we leave?
One thing we talked about, the chains. Be sure they're in proper working order. We had some that actually broke on our truck, and they will beat your wheel fenders up. So just be sure your winter stuff, that whatever you got to use, make sure it's in proper working order, and just be safe.
Yep, no, I agree. That's all good stuff. And if you're chief officers, Rob and I and Charlie to some degree, never been embarrassed to get those hand warmers or things that the hunters use or whatever. Firefighters are generally working out there, and we're standing out there like chiefsicles, not getting a lot of movement. So some hand warmers, foot warmers are not bad things to carry in your turnouts. When you're out there for an extended period, it's certainly an issue. So with that, let's end it there. I think we covered a lot of good points. There's a ton of great stuff here in the chat room. You guys did a great job with that. So until next week, we'll see you again on Firefighting Today, the weekly roundtable. We'll see you next Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern.